He was my childhood best friend, the boy who knew all my secrets. The one who made his summers feel like magic and whose laugh still echoed in my memory, even after all those years. We were inseparable until it pulled us apart, but that summer the one were everything. Change we ended up sharing a bed like we used to as kids, only now we're grown men with feelings. Neither of us dare name out loud that night. In fact, we had darkness, something shifted, something real, something we Calvin Pren didn't happen. This is the story of that night and everything it revealed about love, longing, and the best friend never knew I was in love with until it was almost too late. I hadn't been home in nearly 8 years the moment I turned it off the highway and on a Maple Lane Eiffel. It that strange cocktail off nostalgia and nerves, the trees still leaned over the road, like guardians casting long shadows across the pavement. Mailbox with the peeling red paint still stood crooked in front of my parents' house. Even the air smelled the same pine needles, summer heat, and something warm that felt like childhood. He parked, killed the engine, and stared at a familiar two-story house. White siding, blue shutters, a front porch swing that creaked whenever the wind pushed it too hard. I wasn't nervous about seeing me parents. I was nervous about seeing him, Caleb. He had been more than just my best friend growing up. He was my anchored boy, who patched my scrapes after bike crashes, who taught me how to climb trees and sneak cookies from the pantry without getting caught. We were everything to each other until I left for college. Life happened after that. New friends, big cities, long silences. We kept in touch, barely a birthday text here at random. Saw this and thought of you, massage there, but most of our connection had faded like an old photograph. Still, I thought about him more than I probably should have, and now at 27, after quitting a job I hated and ending a relationship that never felt true, I found myself back home for the summer with nowhere else to go, and knew I wanted to see more than him. After a round of hugs and welcome home smiles from my parents, I unpacked just an auto, feel settled, then restless and needing air. I wandered down to the edge off the neighborhood. That's when I saw him. He was in the backyard of his parents' house, the same house I used to practically live in growing up. He was shirtless, laughing, tossing a baseball to a group of neighborhood kids who looked up to him like he was a superhero. Time had been kind to Caleb. His once boyish features had matured into sharp lines and a chiseled jaw. His skin was sun-kissed, his arms strong from years of coaching the high school team. He wore that same backward cap he always used to, and his grin still hit like a warm breeze after a storm. He turned and spotted me, and froze. Liam, his voice hadn't changed, just deeper now, warmer. It barely had time to smile before Head dropped the glove and jogged over, arms wide. Holy sh! It's really you, I laughed, breath catching in my throat as it pulled me into a hug that lingered just a moment too long. His arms wrapped tight around me, like he wasn't sure if I was real. You look good, man, he said, stepping back, eyes scanning me. You too, coach, still living the dream, Hesed, rubbing the back of his neck. Still here, still me. His smile faltered just for a second. What about you, he asked. Are you back for good? Just the summer, I said. I needed to breathe. Chicago's Aloth nodded slowly, like he understood what he didn't say. Well, I'm glad you're back. We've got a lot to catch up on. We exchanged numbers, made vague plans for later that week. As I walked away, I could feel his gaze on me. When I turned to look back, he was still standing there watching me like he'd just seen a ghost. Wasn't ready to let go of that night. He lay in my childhood bed staring at the ceiling. The silence was louder than remembered. Crickets chirped through the pen window, and somewhere far off a dog barked. I couldn't stop thinking of Boothway. Caleb hugged me, how his hands felt against my back, how his voice cracked just a little when he said my name. I thought I had buried those feelings years ago. I told myself it was just a phase of close friendship, a blur between admiration and longing. But I had never looked at anyone else the way I looked at him, and now he is back in my life. And I wasn't sure I'd survive seeing him a second time. 3 days after wearing it, Caleb texted me, Caleb, are you still alive over there, or did your mom bury you in pie? And small talk come over tonight, just like old times. I'll set up fire pit, you bring stories. I stared at the screen for a second longer than it should have. Then I smiled, me be there after dinner. Hope your mom still makes those lemon bars. Caleb, she made 2 batches, one for you, one for me. We might end up fighting over the last one. Just warning you, that evening as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in peach and violet, I made my way down the sidewalk toward us. My heart beats faster with every step. His backyard hadn't changed much. String lights hung between the trees, the old wooden fence leaned a little more, the fire pit flickered warmly in the center of it all, casting shadows that danced across his face. Liam, he said with that lopsided grin, you came out at me. He shrugged, handing me a cold soda. I doubted everything until Yao walked back into town. There was some methane about the way he said it, soft, almost like a confession. I tried not to read too much into it. We sat onto worn lawn chairs side by side, the fire crackling between us, the scent of burning wood mixed with fresh grass and almond bars. And for a while, we just talked about high school, about people, voiced to know about the lives we built when we stopped talking. But every now and then the conversation dipped into quieter places we hadn't dared explore before. He looked into the flames. Remember that night in senior year after homecoming? I swallowed hard. You remembered it too well. Yeah, I say quietly, when we stayed up all night on your roof. You told me you were scared to leave, that you didn't want to lose this. As I was scared, I admitted, and I did lose us, or maybe I just ran. He turned it toward me, his eyes glowing in the firelight. You didn't lose me there, Wasselance. Then he stood brushing off his jeans. Come on, let's go inside. You're not walking back this late, you sure? He gave him a look. You think I invited you here just for the lemon bars? Inside his room looked almost exactly like I remember, posters off classic rock bands, old trophies on a shelf, worn out flannel on the back off door. But now there was a softness to it, a lived-in warmth that felt safe. Had as me a pair of sweatpants. I've got a spare toothbrush, so don't ask why, Mabe. I always thought you'd come back. That sentence hit harder than Hep probably meant it to. I changed in his bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror. Me heart was racing, my hands shook just slight. Lie, I'd shared beds with friends before, even shared rooms with exes, but this felt different. This was Caleb when he came out. He was already under the covers on one side of the bed, flipping through channels with the remote. Haggling step, don't worry, I don't snore anymore. He grinned. I've evil Eddie. Slid into bed beside him. The sheet smelled like laundry detergent and cedar. The room was dim lit only by the flicker off the TV and the glow of the hallway light. For a while, we watched in silence. Something dumb and familiar laughter came easy, but there was a tension now. We had hum between us like the air wash holding its breath. Eventually, he turned it off. The TV, the silence was louder than before. Liam, yeah, he hesitated. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't left? My chest tightened. All time. He rolled onto his side, facing him. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Oh, you ever think about us there at waste? Question I'd spent years dodging. Theon, I asked myself at every crossroads, one I dreamed about more times than he could. Can I turned toward him, heart hiding more than I wanted to admit. His breath hitched. I could feel the heat from his body, the space between us barely a breath wide. His hand reached across the gap, fingers brushed, minute tentative, scared when our hands to shed. Neither of us pulled away. I used to think I was imagining it. He said, the way you looked at me sometimes, the way I felt when we touched. You weren't imagining it. I said, my voice trembling, moved closer inches. Now I've thought about this night for years. He whispered, what I'd say, what you do, how would I feel if you looked at me like that again? He couldn't breathe, and then in the quiet dark, he kissed me. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't perfect, but it was everything as if were gentle years of unsaid words packed into a single touch. When it pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. Tell me I'm not dreaming. You're not, I whispered, but even if you were, I wouldn't wake up. We didn't do more than kiss that night, but something inside us cracked open. Something we couldn't pretend wasn't there anymore. We fell asleep with his arms wrapped around me like he'd been waiting his whole life to hold Mel like that, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel lost. I felt home. I woke before the sun. The room was painted in soft shadows. Caleb's breath was slow and steady against the back of my neck. His arm was still draped across my waist, thievy with sleep and something deeper, something we hadn't named yet. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, trying to slow the anxious flutter in my chest. Last night wasn't a dream. Every second of it was real. His lips, his voice, the way he held me like he was scared I might disappear again, and now the silence. After the moment in every story where things change, I felt themes shift behind me. Quiet yawn. Then a soft murmur. You awake? He whispered. Yeah. His hand tightened slightly on me waist like he thought I might pull away. I didn't. Instead, I turned over to face him. His hair was messy, eyes still heavy with sleep, but when he looked at him, it was like something had shifted. There was no awkwardness, just Hunnestine morning, he said, voice raspy. Morning. Each ode. We stared at each other for a few seconds, neither of us sure how to begin. Finally, he smiled. So that happened, yeah, he breathed, my heart racing again. Adina paused. Do you regret it? He asked that at me like a brick. I sat up, the blanket falling into my lap. No, I said, maybe too quickly. Not even a little, but I don't know what it means yet, do you? He propped himself on one elbow. I know I've been thinking about kissing you since we were 17. And I know it felt right. He looked down for a second, but I also know this isn't simple. My chest tightened. He was right. What we shared wasn't a neat, easy thing. I'd come back to Maple Creek expecting closure, maybe nostalgia. It hadn't expected us. He reached for my hand, hesitant but warm. I'm not asking for all the answers, Liam. Just don't shut me out again, please. I don't want to, I whispered. I just need time. He nodded slowly. Take all the time you need. I'll be here the next few days. Felt like walking on a tightrope strung between comfort and chaos. We didn't talk much about what happened, but the air between us buzzed with something new. Every glance, every brush. Our fingers felt loaded with meaning. I stayed late again. One nights later, we watched old movies on his laptop like we used to, but this time our shoulders touched. His head leaned toward mine. My heartbeat jumped whenever his arm nudged mine. The tension was unbearable, and still we said nothing at all. We were alone in his kitchen there, and outside tapped gently on the windows. I was rinsing plates. Caleb leaned against the counter, watching me with that half smile. You've barely looked at me all day, he said softly. I paused. That's not true. I kind of is. I dried my hands, sighing. It just, I don't know what to do with this, Caleb. We've known each other since we were 6. You're my best friend. Now I can't stop thinking about your mouth. Heb blinked, a slow flush creeping up his neck. Same. We stared at each other, and then he stepped forward slowly. You don't have to figure it all out right now, but can I ask you one thing? I nodded. Are you scared of me, or just scared of what this could be? The question hit deeper than I expected. I looked at him, really looking at him. I'm not scared of you, I said honestly. I think I'm scared that this thing between us is too real, that if I let myself fall, I won't know how to stop. He smiled soft and almost sat and fall slowly. I'll catch you. I didn't mean to kiss him. Not right then, but he did. He kissed me back like he'd been waiting years for that moment. But not everything could stay perfect. Later that week at the town's annual summer fair, things shifted. We'd gone together, just the two of us. At first it felt normal, like old times, games, fried food, laughter under carnival lights. Then we ran into some old classmates, Liam back from Thebek City. It was Mason and Tyler. Guys who'd gone to school, was still living in town, still loud. Are you just still inseparable? Mason grinned, nudging Caleb, and some things never changed. Tyler dead with a smirk. Remember when everyone you used to say you were secretly dating they a lot? Caleb froze. The smile on his face didn't reach his eyes. And just like that, the warmth between us evaporated later as we walked to the parking lot. Insolence. I felt it unraveling. You okay? I asked gently. He didn't look at me. He fine, but his voice said, otherwise, Caleb, it's nothing. Just forgot what small towns are like. I placed a hand on his arm. You don't have to hide with me. I pulled away slightly. I'm not hiding. It just, I don't want to deal with their crap, not tonight. We sat in his truck insolence. The rain had started again, a soft patter on the windshield. After a while, he turned to me. I like you, Liam, I always have, but this place hasn't changed. I don't want what we have to be tainted by all the noise. It doesn't have to be, I said quietly. We get to define it, not them. He looked at me, torn between fear and longing. I'm scared, whispered. So, am I admitted, but I'm more scared of losing you again. He closed his eyes for a long moment, then reached across the console, taking my hand. Then let's just take it one day at a time. That night I didn't sleep at his place, but I did text him. When I got home, still thinking about your hand in mine, still thinking about your hand in mine. Still thinking about us, one day at a time. Okay, he replied a few minutes later. Caleb, okay, but I can't wait for the next night you sleep beside me. That night changed everything. The days that followed were gentle, softer than I expected, Caleb. And I didn't rush anything. We texted like we used to, beat every message now. Carried away to quiet intimacy. When we were together, we moved like magnets, close, but never quite touching, unless it felt right. The town still watched us, whispered maybe. But we didn't care. We were writing our own story. One evening, I found him at the lake. The same spot we used to bike to his skids, that flat rock we'd lay on watching the clouds roll by. It hadn't changed, and neither had the sound of the water lapping gently against the shore. He was already sitting there, legs dangling over the edge of soda. In his hand, like old times, you came. He said without turning around, I always come when it matters. He looked up at me and smiled quietly, warmly, like he'd been waiting for this moment. Have been thinking. He said eyes on there isn't about us. About that night I sat down beside him. I don't regret it, I said before he could go on, not 1 second. He looked at me now, even with everything, even with the stares, that pressure, the confusion. I nodded, especially with all tap, because none of it compares to what I feel when I'm near you. Caleb exhaled slow and full of something and spoke, and then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. My heart stopped when I saw it. At waist had note the one I'd written to him at 16, but never had the guts to give. I found this, he said softly, tuck it inside that old shoebox of dumb photos and movie stubs. He opened it gently, reading aloud, if I ever find the courage to tell you, it's always been you. But I don't know if I can survive in our friendship, so I'll bury this like I buried everything else. Maybe one day you'll understand. My throat tightened. You kept it, I asked, barely above a whisper. He nodded. You gave me everything except that truth. But I knew even then I just wasn't ready to face it. He turned toward me, his voice trembling with honesty. But I'm ready now. The sun had begun to set, gold spilling across the water, turning it to molten fire. He stood, held out his hand, and I took it. We walked down to the dock where the world felt quieter, where it felt like only we existed. Then without a word he pulled me into his arms. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't dramatic. It was peaceful. A long soft kiss that melted the years between us. One that whispered every word we hadn't said, every touch when held back. He kissed me like I was home. And for the first time in my life I let myself all the way in. Later that night we sat curled up under a blanket on his porch. The stars above blinked like they'd been waiting for us to arrive. At this moment Caleb leaned his head on my shoulder. Can I tell you something? He asked. Anything you used to dream about. This one I was aching, not just the kiss or the hand holding, but you sitting beside me like this. Not needing to hide, just being here is for him. I swallowed the lump in my throat and reached for his hand. Well, I whispered. Dreams come true simultaneously, sometimes after years of silence, but they do. He smiled. So what? Now, I looked at him at this moment. I think we just hold each other. And when we're ready, we start the next chapter together. He asked always. Caleb moved to the city. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I found a small apartment just outside. Then always quiet enough to breathe, close now to feel alive. He teaches music at a local school. I still work and design, but every evening we meet on the balcony while beers, one blanket, and that same look in his eyes that says we made it. That for the doubts, the whispered gossip, they are all behind us now. We didn't just fall in love. We chose it every day, ever quiet, beautiful, complicated day. And that night, that one night, that started it all. It didn't just change our lives, it gathered them. Meaning, thank you for staying till the very end. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to Gay Infidelity Stories of Her. For more heartfelt stories, your support truly means the world.